Shout out to YouTube and the creative folks providing us music today. Set in the tone. Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about the Creative Support Organization grant today. And then we'll be utilizing the Q&A feature for any questions that you might have. So if you can navigate to, there's a section that says more, maybe on your screen or on your phone with the 3 little dots. That'll open up and there's a place in there for the Q&A. We do have the chat disabled for this meeting, so you'll only be able to put your questions into the Q&A.
Definitely look forward to reading those questions. So make sure that you're putting any question that you may have in there. Towards the end of this session, we will be going over each question.
And I guess now's as good of a time as ever. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shawnee Harvey, and I am the Creative Industries Division Director for the New Mexico Economic Development Department.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Arlen Nelson, and I am the Creative Industries Division Coordinator with the New Mexico Economic Development Department. And we can go ahead and just to be able to make sure that we are able to use everyone's time right, we can be able to go into our overview of our New Mexico Creative Industries Division 2026 Creative Support Organization Grant. So we're going to pretty much go through this whole application. Remember, any questions you have about the application, please put it into the Q&A, and we will be sure to make sure that we can answer it to the best of our ability. Uh, if it is a question that we cannot answer, we will get back to you and be able to try to get it to you. All right. Um, so first off, I want to talk about mainly the intentions behind this grant. So our overview is the Creative Industry Support Grant. Organizational grant is for the organizations that have demonstrated a history of advancing New Mexico's creative economy. This program seeks to support our organizations and support creative entrepreneurs. Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. This program seeks to support organizations that support creative entrepreneurs, companies, businesses, and workers through technical assistance, incubation, workforce development, creative ecosystem development, and building creative industry and ecosystem networks. The grant fund will strengthen the capacity of those groups that support creative industry growth statewide with a ceiling cap of $62,500 in grant rewards for existing creative organizations. Now, the disclaimer is our grant amounts are up to $62,500, and we are doing a total of about 8 to 10 awards, and that is subject to obtain based on funding availability. 50% of our final award submissions are tasks based off of our statute to be able to go into rural and underserved communities. Going into the requirements, and this is mainly talking about whether you pass or fail and really thinking about if you are the right applicant for this grant application. The right applicant must be a local government, nation, tribe, Pueblo, nonprofit, or for-profit organization. You must demonstrate at least 3 years of impactful work supporting creative companies, workers, entrepreneurs, or businesses. You must operate in or serve communities within the state of New Mexico. So no companies outside of New Mexico. You must also show a track record of services or initiatives that advance one or more of our creative industry clusters. Those clusters are performing arts, visual arts, literary arts, entertainment, media, information, and broadcasting, applied arts and design, meaning that goes into architecture, landscape, architecture, museum, and galleries, promotion, marketing, graphics, and industrial design, technology and digital media, crafts and arts and professions, which goes into metal woodwork, glass, ceramics, textiles, and culinary arts, and further. And more of that can be explored by going and looking into our 2024 Creative Industries Study, where you'll be able to go to our page 206, and you'll be able to see over 170 different North American identification codes that we have under our industry sectors to be able to know if you qualify and if you fall within those codes. Just giving the
I
screen a
was going
little
to show
time.
them, but it's a very large file because it's a 200-page document. And I'm going off a hotspot today, so bear with us. But again, maybe we'll just pop back over to that once it loads.
All right. And we're getting into our reporting requirements, which some of these are subject to change, but what would not change specifically is knowing that all award applicants must participate in a 6-month progress check-in with us in the Creative Industries Division. You also must submit a final report with 12 months after the payment is received, including but not limited to quantitative metrics, meaning the numbers of creative businesses served, revenues. Those are some examples. So however you take in your quantitative metrics, you must also be considerate of how it affects your economic development and your economic development ecosystem for your creatives in that space. You also have the qualitative outcomes, which could be success stories, challenges, impacts. Those are also outcomes that we're expecting to see through how you take in your data and information and feedback. You're going to be required to complete a post-grant awardee survey. to share lessons learned and future needs, and that's something that will be created by our division to be able to send to you. This data will help the creative industries division to be able to help us to understand how we can demonstrate creative economy growth and advocate for continued and expanding funding, but also know how we can improve our funding programs to be able to better serve the creative businesses in New Mexico.
Thank you,
All right.
Arlen, and I'll pop back over here real quick.
All right.
I know we say page 206. That's page 206 of the document directly. Um, so getting down here to page 206, this starts listing all the different NAICS codes that qualify for the businesses that may be supported through the support grant and the types of industry areas and folks that we're looking at. So you've got folks in culinary arts, crafts and artisan professions, etc. And there's a few pages here of that. So, we link that here just so folks could get some more information and clarity about what are the creative industries, what kind of businesses are we talking about specifically. And again, page 206 directly of the study. And I'm just going to say that, page 206. So look for the red number in the bottom, starts on page 206. So we're going to talk a little bit more about funding availability and uses for this grant. And we've gotten some questions in already. So this support organization grant is looking to provide funding dollars and grant support for organizations that are providing support to creative industries, companies, workers, etc. So this is looking at helping support programming that's already being provided for the community. So again, we state this in there again, just because we kind of get repeat questions. We're looking at awards of up to 62.5K for 8 to 10 awards. And then those final numbers of awards and award amounts are subject to change based on our grant funding availability. So the grant funds for this program may be used for the following: providing technical assistance to creative industry businesses, companies, and professionals. We know that creative professionals and creative companies don't necessarily always have the same access to technical assistance. So when we're talking about business development support, accounting, things like that, things that can help creative companies and professionals thrive. We're also looking at creative business incubation, as well as assistance with direct program delivery. This is, a little bit redundant, but again, we're looking at organizations that are going to use this funding directly for providing programming to creative industry businesses, companies, and workers. It also includes creative workforce development programs, which could be looking at skills development or trade programs. And we're also looking at broad creative ecosystem development. And if you're not familiar with entrepreneurial ecosystem work, real easy to kind of look up and get to know a little bit more about, but we're talking about building, networks and enhancing the community and building more connections and crossover so that there's more resources and programs available for folks, and also that folks know what those resources and programs are. We're also allowing this funding to be used to cover venue and logistics costs that are associated with delivering the programming that your organization might offer, as well as personnel costs that are directly related to delivering the programming, including contractor fees. So if you're bringing on facilitators, workshop instructors, etc., those are what we're considering personnel costs, or the folks who are leading that program directly, maybe being able to increase their capacity to do a little bit more or bring additional folks on. Technology costs that are directly associated with the programming, service, or resource delivery of that programming, as well as any photography and video costs that might be associated with that programming, delivery, materials creation for the program delivery, and resources and services, marketing and promotion, and the point that we'll make here is that we will do our best to share the different events and programming and workshops that you all might be submitting for, but your organization is still responsible for ensuring the reach and participation that's outlined in your application. So if you say that you're going to reach XYZ number of creative businesses, that's going to be on your organization to kind of execute and formalize. We will help on our end, but our network is still growing and still in its infancy, and you all are connected, directly to the folks folks that need this programming and support. So it's going to take all of us working together to make sure that we can get these kinds of resources and programs out to folks. And then the last one is other reasonable costs that are associated with your organization's programming, creative economic development, and execution of the projects or programs that might be outlined in your application. Now the fun part, what you cannot use this funding for. You're not going to be able to use this funding to do capital construction. So if you're looking at building any kind of additional infrastructure, this is not the grant for you. That is our business development and expansion grant, which will not open until we're going to do 2 rounds, December and February. So if you're thinking about doing individual business improvements and working on what you can do as a business owner yourself and improve your own business, this is not that grant. This is specifically looking at support programming, resources, and services for the creative industries. No debt reduction. You can't be paying off loans or existing financial obligations with these grant funds. They're also not allowed for lobbying or political activities. I hope that would go without saying, but we have to put it in there, even though we always appreciate your support in promoting and talking about what the Creative Industries Division may have been able to do for you to help you connect or open up those opportunities. This funding can't be used directly to do anything like that. Individual scholarships, prizes, or personal grants. Another example of that is like stipends for participation, for broad participation. That is not allowed with this funding. If you are going to look at trying to provide something like that, there needs to be some sort of service provided or product provided in exchange for how you might be paying folks out, right? So no individual scholarships, prizes, or personal grants are allowed with this funding, and no alcohol, entertainment, or personal expenses. We say entertainment in this because this is not looking at an event support grant, and this is not looking at kind of paying artists and performers for their time, but this is about increasing the amount of programming and services that are available within the state to support creative industries and making sure that this funding goes directly towards that. You also are not only able to use this funding for any activities outside of New Mexico that are not directly benefiting New Mexico's creative industries. Also, we're not looking at funding duplicative expenses that are already funded by other state or federal programs. And the funding also is not allowed to go towards cash reserves or endowments or purely artistic creation that's not connected to a broader creative economic business or industry development. So, creative performance, artistic projects, these things, we're not looking at that for this grant particularly. This is all about providing support programming, resources and services, et cetera, that you have already been offering to folks, continuing that work specifically for programming. And then notes for applying organizations. Your organization, unless you are a tax exempt or local government entity, you are going to be responsible for the GRT taxes and other applicable taxes from the income received. You will get a 1099 from the state when tax season approaches, noting any grant funding that you may have received from the state. So you will be required to report on that. So we want to be transparent about that up front so that if you need to set aside money in the budget to cover the taxes that your organization may become responsible for, that you're building that in to your budget. And again, the way that we've been doing most of our grants in the Creative Industries Division is as full advance upfront payments, but we're also, depending on applications, depending on projects, case by case basis, we might split that into 2 or more payments that will still be in advance to your organization, but we might want to give you a chunk of that funding up front for you to execute on the grant programming that you're saying you're going to do in your application. And then we might check in with you at that 6-month required check-in. And then once we can make sure that we have, gone through the scope of work, things are progressing as intended, we can then have you invoice us for the second tranche of those funds. And I am working with our comms team right now to put up a projected timeline for the grants. So that'll be available on our grant page shortly. And it will mirror, it's not this highlighted one, that's different, but it'll mirror similarly for this application, it'll show up below here. So our grant period is going to run, it should open on Monday, September 29th. It's going to close Friday, October 24th at 6 p.m., not 11:59 p.m. These aren't college homework assignments. We want you to just get it done, get it submitted, and not be worrying about it, suffering through any technological difficulties because we're not available at 11 p.m. on a Friday because we want to be out having fun. But well, or in bed sleeping, which is probably what I'm going to be doing by the time this grant application closes. But again, 6 o'clock Friday, October 24th is when that's going to be due. We are going to be reviewing applications through the entire month of November, and then we will start our processing period for those who get selected for awards is going to happen between December and January. So the funding and the project period of when you finally get your funding in hand, our estimate right now is it's going to be February of 2026, and then you'll have through February of 2027 to complete your programming, etc. So again, that timeline is going to be updated and posted to the website, but just giving you all kind of some insight there. It'll probably take us 1 to 3 months just to get through the review and then just do all the processing. It is a very lengthy course of activities to award grants through the state, and our division does tons of grants. In our department, the agency does tons of grants through different programming, right? We have the JEDI office, Healthy Food Financing Fund. We have an EDO grant. We have several grants through the ED division, the Technology and Innovation Office, as well as the Outdoor Recreation Division. So just know, I think we're an agency of about 70 people, but we do a lot of work pushing out these grants, and our finance team, it does their best, but we have to work through a lot of different government agencies to get all of these processed, and they still have to go through clearing with tax and revenue as well as Department of Finance and Administration. So keep that in mind. So when you're wondering when is it going to happen, we expect that folks will hopefully have funds in hand if they're selected by February of 2026. And our favorite piece, W-9s. W-9s take the longest to process. I know I get into this on every grant review webinar, but that's just the nature of the state, right? We have a lot of details in here. The best thing you could do if you haven't submitted a W-9 to the state for this program, or you haven't done one that's dated for the current year, we're going to make sure that it says 2025 on it. Print it out. Make sure you check the right boxes. If you're a single member LLC, you're not going to check the LLC box on the W-9. You're going to check the sole proprietor single member LLC box, which is different than the LLC generally. So it's linked in there. But again, we have a limited liability one here, but if you are a single member LLC, you're actually going to be checking this box. So just make sure that you're paying special attention to that. And again, the easiest thing you can do is print it out, sign it, scan it or take a picture and upload it back. Because if it's not coming up as an ink signature or our team catches any digital signatures, we can't do DocuSign, we can't do digital. So the best thing you could do is probably just print it out. And then we're going to ask for your contact information. This is all standard. We want the organization, website, etc. And you'll see the asterisks on here. You're also able to provide an alternate email if there's someone else that needs to be copied. And then we also want to know your county, your city and your county, so that we can be tracking who we're serving and how far we're reaching across the state.
All right. And just one thing I would like to press on, specifically going through this application, even going back to the W-9, please read each of the upload questions thoroughly to be able to understand what format we are asking for. Some of our questions are particular to a certain format. So if it's not a PDF and you upload a Word document, it will not let you submit your application. So you must adhere to the format requirements that are in the questions. Okay. So we're gonna go over eligibility and demographic. this is a little bit more of our information to be able to understand specifically where do you serve, what community you serve for your business. How do your business identify as what specific entity? Knowing that this is a grant that's open to for-profits, nonprofits, and government entities and nation tribes and pueblos. So anyone that actually serves the creative economy and does technical assistance to creative businesses kind of fall in that line. We are paying attention to understanding what region in which you operate within. Oh yeah, and you are also able to select none of the above and be able to put in more information so we know exactly who you are. Below is our regional map of how we break down the regions in the economic development department within the state. So this helps us to understand where particularly you may be at when it comes down to understanding your county and understanding if you fall within that rural and underserved 50%, right? So that helps us with making sure that we're adherent to the law, but also to know where are we actually making an impact in serving and understanding what businesses are located. Again, this is a good example right here where you go to the upload your company organizational logo. We're asking for logos up front just because it is easier for us to be able to think about marketing or social media and just get all that out the way without having to have so much communication in between grant awardees if you are eligible to win the grant. You see the PNG format only. It should not take much to be able to upload a PNG format if you have access to Canva or even if you have access to, I believe you are able to do it through Word or PowerPoint to be able to change it into a PNG file. That's one of the good examples of seeing that we do let you know what format we need. If you have uploaded a JPEG or anything like that, it actually won't take in the upload. So your application will not be complete. All right, move to the next session. So this is our first section of questions. In this area, you kind of see where this is an organizational track record in alignment with creative industries and the creative economy. In this area, we are asking more about some of the details about your organization, like what's your organization's mission and how does it align with some of the services that you are doing, understanding what program that you are looking to either expand, work on, or some of the programming that you have done in the past 3 years. As you can see, question 4 is that prime example of showing if you have that experience. So we are scoring and looking at that, right? It is a minimum of 3 years of experience of doing some of the technical assistance and supportive work to creative businesses throughout the state of New Mexico. All right. Being able to get some more information and understanding what particular industry clusters you may actually help and service. Understanding, again, another upload format that actually, question 5 is multiple uploads. So you can see we have a 5-page limit, understanding that as a PDF format. So it's easier for us to be able to read, take in, put it into our filing systems. And then you'll see also where we're asking about how do you see your work advancing the cluster in which you are working in or clusters in which you're working in so that you are able to select multiple clusters, knowing that some industry supports are in multiple industry areas, especially with the creative industries.
Great. And then section 2 is going to go over your proposed use of funds. We want to know how much you're requesting. And then we also want to know what you're going to be doing with the funding that you're requesting. What kind of programming, resources, or services are you planning to provide? And how creative industry companies, workers, businesses, or entrepreneurs will be supported by that programming. So we want to know both, right? We want to know what the program does and we want to know how you do it. So just make sure we've put in a 500-word limit. Doesn't mean you have to use all 500 words. If you can state it clearly and be descriptive without hitting, like, you know, it's not a requirement that you have to fill up all that word space. But again, you have that option. And then you also have an opportunity to upload that if you would rather do it that way. But if you do decide to upload it, please write upload in this box and then choose your file here. I think that we still have it set to PDF, but since we didn't specify, I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that it's probably asking for a PDF or a Word. We
Everything
can
is
confirm that.
PDF if it's not displayed. I will say that I have come to find that out in the background.
Okay. So moving on, then we're also going to ask you about your budget, but this is kind of a three-part question. We want to know what your organization's total operating budget is, and then we want to know your existing programming budget. So we want to see your organizational budget, the programs for the budgets that you're talking about in case they might be separate from your organizational budget, but a lot of folks will have those put together. And then we want the budget of your proposed grant funds and how you're going to use them line by line. We want to know in-kind or contributions from financial support that you might be receiving from other communities or local governments, and just specifying where the funding is going to go and for what purpose. And then we want that in a PDF with all of it kind of exported together, and we have a 4-page limit there. So ideally, you'll use one of those pages for your grant fund, and then you have the 3 other pages to figure out how you might need to shrink or fit and format your organizational operating budget, programming budget, and then the grant budget itself. And then we also have a question here if your organization will be able to complete the programming if you're not selected for funding. And yes, completely. Yes, we'll be able to do the programming partially, or no, not at all. If you select yes, partially, or no, you'll be asked to provide a little bit of additional information on what needs or gaps our grant funding would be addressing in your programming, and what you would be able to accomplish by having this funding. So that's your opportunity to explain why. And then we want a timeline for your programming and execution, and we want to know the activities as well as milestones that you can assign for yourself so that we can work that, if you're selected, into your grant agreement. And again, that's going to be a PDF. And if you, whoops, lots of fun stuff in there. I hope there's just, it's all public information. I hope it should be. Anyway, PDF, if you don't select a PDF, it will not take the form in towards the end. Section 3, we're going to be asking about equity, access, and inclusion. And I'm just scrolling down to my notes here, sorry. So we want to know what your promotion and marketing plan is for your programming resources or services described. Again, that's talking kind of about how you're making sure that you're getting the word out so that people are able to access your program. And then we want to know which populations or regions are going to benefit directly from the work that you're proposing in your application. We have a range of different geographic locations as well as different communities that are listed here, and you're more than welcome to put other and provide additional information, not additional information, but other groups that maybe we did not capture on this list. You're more than welcome to add those in here. And this is just a broad way. If you have multiple check boxes here, maybe you're helping several groups, or just one or just a few, or maybe you're helping all of them. And then we also have a nifty statewide one in there in case your programming is looking at serving across all 4 corners of New Mexico. And then the last part of this section is going to be asking you about how your organization ensures that your programs and operations are accessible, inclusive, and impactful for a wide range of creative industries, individuals, and communities. And again, we give you a little bit of kind of insight here. So if you're looking at the types, we might be asking for types of businesses, what size those businesses are, how many employees they might have, the industry areas you're going to be supporting if there's more than one, or maybe an extension of those industries, and a number of other things that you might be taking into consideration when you're designing your programming so that you're ensuring that, creatives and individuals of all types, regardless of who they are, where they are, have access to your programming. And now we'll move on to our section 4, which I
All
feel like
right.
I should just note. I know we didn't go over the scoring rubric because it's at the bottom. Arlen, I'm going to pull us down real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's your fancy scoring rubric at the bottom, and you'll notice that there's 3 sections on here that are weighted the heaviest. And that is going to be your track record and alignment with creative industries work, your economic impact and evaluation, which we're about to go over, and your proposed use of funds. So keep that in mind when you're doing your application, that those are the sections that are weighted heaviest in this grant application.
All right.
Arlen, this is your.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the Q&A questions. Um, so in this section, we're pretty much trying to understand economic impact evaluation and the metrics. So this is my favorite section. We're going to be asking you how do you taking in your quantitative outcomes, aiming, and how do you pretty much plan to use that for your programming, qualitative information and outcomes, and how are you aiming to achieve that with your programming. Um, we're looking again, seeing how many creative businesses do you plan to support through your proposed programming and understanding, and hoping that you have a good understanding of what that could be, and then knowing through our check-ins and through the processes once it's complete, we'll be able to understand how much of an impact you did make. Uh, how will your organization measure the proposed outcomes and evaluate the success of a project? Also understanding how is your organization taking in data and feedback from people who are able to utilize the services so you can better your services in your community. And then that also helps us to better understand what services are in your community. Knowing that you are also agreeing to what we already said above, the 6-month project check-in by checking these boxes, the final report with the quantitative and qualitative data, and then the post-grant survey. And then we're going into sustainability and collaboration.
You got to do all three.
You got to do all three. Now, if you move past, again, I think that's a good, thank you for saying that. If you move past this without doing all three, your application is not going to be complete. Okay. Or you might also have to consider those are requirements of the application. So that think that's enough information right there. Section 5, sustainability and collaboration. This section we are really looking to see how many people are invested into your project. How many people are really seeing the impact in your community, in your creative ecosystem, and willing to buy into it, right? So we're seeing how will your organization sustain the work beyond this grant program. This grant should not be the only thing that's making your program work, right? So we want to see how are you thinking about utilizing the funding to really keep your programming ongoing, right? Because you never know what's going on with our economy overall in the federal government, but we should know what's going on in our creative economy and know what resources we have and see how they can maintain themselves. So that's what we're looking at. Also, a contingency plan just in case if you are not able to address all the things you're trying to achieve. We would like to understand what was some of the challenges or some of the challenges you see, and thinking about what are you doing to try to mitigate those challenges.
Right. Can
Right.
I add something there, Arlen? So, like, if
Mhm.
you're planning on doing in-person workshops or virtual workshops, something like that, you know, do you have a plan for if you're running into not having a location, not having broadband connection, et cetera? So, what kind of contingencies do you have in place to ensure that you can still deliver your programming even if these things come up?
All right. I'm sorry. Q&A. Q&A. There's a lot of good questions in here.
I never get distracted reading them too.
Um, and 23, describe any partners, collaborators, and networks involved into your project. This is kind of a way of being able to understand some of the in-kind matching that could be there, but also understanding what is some of the long-term strengths of your creative ecosystem in your area. How do you see how are your programs fitted in that? And also, again, what I said earlier, understanding how much community buy-in is in that program and project. And then last one, I think I'll have this one too. This is more of just certification and submission understanding. So understanding like once you put your name or and title there, and you say yes, you agree to everything that is in this application. You plan to adhere to the 6 month check-in, to the qualitative and quantitative data, and also to the post-grant survey, but also adhering to any changes that may happen and being in the loop. We will be paying attention to if people actually select yes or no in this section. And I think this is just a good clarification section. So knowing that if you get here, you're pretty much at the end of the application. I would definitely double check and make sure you have all your uploads properly, and then move forward from there. And I know it's back to shining with the rubric.
Yeah, and one more thing on that is we want to make sure that the folks submitting applications for these programs are the folks that have the authority to say that their organization can complete the programming or can engage in the programming. So maybe you have a grant writer, maybe you have an intern, maybe you got someone on staff. If all is well and you have a marvelous team, or it might just be you, right? So your name's going to show up in the contact information and the authorized representative. If you're not the authorized representative completing the application on behalf of your organization, we want whoever is going to do that final signature on the grant to okay it with the state, confirming all the reporting requirements, the clawback of funds if they're not used for the right purposes, or the returning of any additional funds that are not used for items specified in the program budget. That's whose name and title should be going on this certification section, so that when we're doing review or we're calling people up and we're doing a check-in and we say, well, so and so approved this grant, it's not someone in the organization that might not have that authority or potentially might not be part of that organization at all. So
Mhm.
that's just a note there. But again, that's someone who you can go over the packet with them of everything you're going to put in the application, and then you're, welcome to put their name in there as long as they have okayed you to do so. Because if not, we run into snags later down the line when we're trying to go through applications and see if they're viable. Again, here's your scoring rubric. These are going to be scored out of 200 points, and you have, I think, just 5 sections of questions, but organizational track record, proposed use of funds, and economic impact and evaluation and metrics are going to be looked at the most and are weighted the most in this application. We did our best to make it straightforward and, I would say short, but not really, because we have to collect a lot of information from you all. A lot of times people think that grants are like free funding, and it's not necessarily free funding. It's funding with lots of strings attached. And the
Mhm.
reason that we attach those strings is that so that we can turn around and prove and show to the legislature, to the communities, to all of our folks that these grant investments matter. They're having an impact, and here's how, and here's why. So when we're measuring that over time, just know we're putting a lot of questions on you, but that's because we want to make sure that you are going to be able to produce your best work, and we're going to be able to champion you, because we don't want to end up a year down the line asking for funding back. That's always the last thing that we're looking at doing. We get super excited when we read your applications and we hear about the programming that you all are proposing, and we're just doing what we can to make sure that we're going to be able to hold on to that. So I think with that, we get to turn it back around for
I got you.
questions. And then I
Hmm.
think when you submit this, you will not get an email confirming that your submission was received. You will go to a page after this that says, "Thank you, your submission was received." If you hit that next page, like right now, it's not going to let me do it because I don't have all the information in here.
Hmm.
Um, when you hit submit and you see "Thank you, it's been received," we received your application, we promise, but we will not be doing any of the review until November. So um, we'll turn it over to the Q&A. Arlen, I'm trying to like
All
reload
right.
and refresh.
No
What I'm
problem. I
gonna
got the
do,
questions for you.
okay,
Um,
I
I
know
think
I saw one in there. I was just gonna address quickly. Where do you find the grant? Where do you go?
yeah, go.
Etc. Our website is edd.newmexico.gov/creative industries. And okay, no, I that was wrong.
business development.
edd.newmexico.gov/creative. If you just do /creative, it'll take you to our main page, which is the same page, and you will see apply by October 24th for the support organization grant. If you click that, it'll take you to our grant page, and it'll show you the different grants that we're doing this year so far that have been announced to date. And right here you have the apply for the grant link that'll take you directly to the application that we just went through. And then you also have a PDF version of the grant application here if you want to look at it that way. And then I think I saw some other stuff asking about if we have a flyer for public information
Yes.
purposes. That on our social media, both our Instagram and Facebook pages have the grant information there. So if you're looking at sharing the flyer, sharing the information out, this is the current grant. It's right here. And it's also linked in our bio. So if you navigate over there, it'll show you how to get again to the grant page. And then
Yeah.
you also have a post with all of our grants that we announced so far. There's another one coming, but irrelevant. So for
Also,
this
it's
these
the
purposes.
webinar, our last newsletter. If you're subscribed to the newsletter, our last newsletter also has a email version of the grant public information flyer and more information on the grant prior to what we did today and this week. So,
Yeah, and then it's
um,
also available same on our Facebook.
I think the next one I see that's outside of like where they can find the recordings and things like that is, would you consider any startup funds for a 501(c)(3) nonprofit for independent adults who are brain injured and need supportive housing? About 5K.
So this grant is specifically to provide programming for creative industry companies, workers, entrepreneurs, and professionals. So it's not startup funding for individual businesses or nonprofits. It is specific for organizations that have a demonstrated track record of doing creative industries work in the community. So this is not an application or a grant application that would fit um, for supportive housing or startup funding for 501(c)(3). Unfortunately, that sounds like something that would need to go through the New Mexico Housing Authority. They might have rental assistance and support programs on that side, but it does not seem like a fit for creative industries.
All right. And I'm sorry, I kind of lost track. I was trying to refresh it.
I have does personal grants include stipends for participating artists?
Yes.
So participating artists is an odd way to frame it. So what I will say is that if you have artists that are providing a service or a program or doing demonstrations to teach others how to do the art because you're doing, skills development and trade, you're not necessarily providing an artist stipend for participation, right? They are providing some sort of service or program for you. So they're actually, providing a professional service. They are being paid or contracted or provided a fee, etc., for providing a creative professional service or product. It's really not a stipend for participation, right? That is what I would say. So if you're looking at that in your application, we're talking about, people being paid for their time and services as a creative professional. So
Yes.
that's what the funding uses are allowed for. So when we're talking about personnel costs for people that are providing programming, if an artist is being paid to provide that programming, to us that is an allowable use, but we wouldn't really frame it as a stipend. We're talking about creative professionals that are being, contracted or asked
Contracted.
to provide a service. And I say that because I'm in the midst of having several talks with folks right now about how we reframe what we're talking about, because we're not just paying someone to go out and perform, right? We're asking
Hmm.
them to teach something, to lead a workshop, etc. So we're looking at it more as a creative professional development.
Okay. And then the next one I see is when you say work you've already been doing, will you consider programs that have been small that we are looking to make larger through this grant? Yes.
Yeah. And you answered that, I think, in the chat,
Yeah.
right, Arlen? But
Yeah, I
yes,
answered
that's
that. I just
something
want to
we
make
would
sure that.
consider. Yes. If it's a
Uh,
program that you're already offering and you're trying to expand the number of people you can offer it to, absolutely. So then what about business incubation?
mhm.
How can you have 3 years of experience of history if you're applying for startup funds? So again, I think that that is potentially a misunderstanding. When we say business incubation in this particular grant, we are talking about an organization that is providing business incubation services to creative enterprises. So you already have to have a track record of being an incubator in existence for 3 years, or offering that programming for 3 years before you're able to apply for this grant. So we're not doing startup funding for these organizations. This is about organizations that are already in existence and are providing programming resources and services to the creative ecosystem. Um,
I think the next
n-
one I seen that is uh helpful is thinking about Sharon's question with can you please clarify if an applicant can be an artistic organization such as a theater group who is a significant contributor to the community's creative economy, but both through performance partnerships and vendors? Every creative artist is a contractor through the theater, and we understand it can't be for artistic creation, but has to drive the creative economy somehow. Who do we direct questions to regarding our specific questions? Thank you so much.
so again,
So,
we're looking for organizations that are providing some sort of service, resource, or programming for the community that is like expanding their opportunities. So mm, not, hiring people for a bunch of public performance or plays. That's not quite the fit for this. That would be more of a New Mexico arts related grant where you're, you know, doing these services and performances. But what we're talking about is specifically, let me go to this. Whoops, sorry. We're going to scroll up and down. We're specifically looking at programs that are offering technical assistance, business incubation, programming that's doing workforce development, creative ecosystem development, venue logistics costs. So we're looking at people that are providing workshops, incubation, workforce development opportunities as a set program. This isn't about funding, plays for the sake of making plays. It would be like, and this is where I don't like answering specific questions, because then people take this and try to like use it as their project. If you were teaching people how to run a theater company and how to run a production, right, that's a little bit different than people going out for auditions and then getting together and performing a play. Like the outcomes of this kind of programming is about training and increasing access to resources and services that are allowing people to grow their creative profession or area. And, we don't necessarily do individual artistic funding. That is more of a New Mexico arts based program. So that's how
yeah.
I would differentiate that.
I also see a film related question in there about how do we fit film related activities in our scope of grants in particular. And I think
Well, sorry, can we go in order? Because I
mhm.
still, there's R 5016 C6 nonprofits eligible. Nonprofit organizations are eligible for this funding. So if you are any sort of nonprofit that is still going to be able to show that you are providing that kind of resource, service, or programming, you have the opportunity to enter another organizational type when we ask you what you are. So we want to know what you're registered as. So 501c6 is fine. And then we went over where to get the application. And then I see, would a project upgrading technical capacity, making the theater auditorium wireless qualify? No, it would not. This is that would be for our business development and expansion grant, where funding is used specifically to make improvements and developments for the business. This grant is for funding that's used basically purely for programming purposes to provide some sort of service opportunity, et cetera, to creative industry professionals. So that would not qualify for this. And then can you please clarify what types of film related activities fits in the scope of this grant, particularly wondering about convenings for local filmmakers and film production workshops? The Creative Industries Division explicitly excludes film as an industry area that we are focused on. And that explicitly looks at filming activities that are being supported through the New Mexico Film Office. A film festival where people are getting together to show their multitude of amazing creations that they made is not a support activity. That is like an event and a convening that brings people together. So we will not be funding things specifically like that. And again, film is just a not great word for us in the creative industries division. I'm still working with my leadership team on how we are going to move this moving forward, but we are looking for folks that are doing work in these areas, right? Entertainment, digital media, technology. So the use of the word film in our applications, we do not do film support in our office directly. It is still something that we are trying to narrow out, but statutorily, we're not allowed to touch film. So I would say that things like that likely aren't going to qualify. And when we're talking about film production workshops, there is already programming and funding support for film production workshops offered through the New Mexico Film Office and several other organizations that do a lot of work around film. I know that there's also a lot of city-run film offices that run those kinds of production workshops and other organizations that run those workshops. We are probably not going to touch any of that because we're specifically excluded from doing film. And again, those are expenses that are already funded by other programs. New Mexico Film Office hosts workshops like that, as well as several other organizations. We are looking very specifically at our creative industry areas, which don't include film. So I hope that helps answer that. I have demonstrated. Next question is, I have proof of 3 years of experience, but my entity is only 2 years old. Is that okay?
I don't remember seeing a question talking about
Years in business.
years in
All
business.
of our grants to date have required that the entity be in existence for 3 years or more. So I would say it's unlikely, but if there is a strong case to be made in the grant application that's submitted, we're going to take these on a case by case basis. We're just looking for 3 years of impactful work. And typically our entity age needs to have been established. This year it's 2022 or later, right,
Yeah,
Arlen?
2022 or later.
Yeah. Next question, can a government organization use the funds to support a creative industries through event sponsorship? No, this grant is not for event sponsorship. That is a different program that we ran last year. This funding is specifically looking at supporting programming that supports creative industries work. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the funding uses. This is specifically what we're looking at. We're looking at putting funding towards programs that exist to help develop creative industry companies, workers, and businesses. So a government entity then using that funding to just distribute to other creative events is not quite the use of this. If it was funding that was going to existing programs, that would be a little bit different. But we're not looking at event sponsorship with this grant.
Yeah. I think the next question too, I would have like to just to point out of like the what kind of programming and service are most exciting to you all. I think
I don't
questions like that is questions we try to avoid to like what Shawnee said earlier, is not to give you any information or give you examples for you to kind of go into the application and try to apply for it and try to like I don't know, I guess figure out what's the ideal program. I think your program should already be functional, already should be running, and just through that experience, I should already be able to see that. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to answer that question, but I would try to say if y'all could avoid some of those direct questions to the grant application when doing some Q&A of like asking our opinion on it, to try to get a good answer. I don't know if that actually helps helps you.
Yeah. It's not a broad enough application question. It's asking about the content of your proposal, and we can't answer
Hmm.
questions like that. Those are things that we'll address when we're doing scoring. Let's see. Next question
Nick.
says, we have a program where we have trained marketing interns to support creative businesses that are in need of marketing services, and DWS pays those interns. Would this be an issue for the grant funds, assuming that the grant funds are only used for the training, with the paid internship funding being separate? Uh, no, Nick, it would not be an issue because that funding that you're using, it's because the funding is separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there would not be an issue because the funding is separate.
Probably be
So,
something different if you was getting funding from like uh JTIP or something like that, and that still be under the EDD umbrella, then that would be probably more questions or conversation. But since it's
right.
under a separate agency and knowing that it hits a different aspect of your programming, I think that would be like I said, that's fine.
Next one says, for operating budget, is an upload of our P&L form for QuickBooks acceptable? Yes, as long as it's in a PDF format and reads clearly.
Mhm. The
Next,
next one is we are a collaborative for this. We are a collaborative applying for this grant, hence more than one organization, for profit and not for profits. Can we apply as multiple entities yet working together on one project? Application does not look like it allows collaboration. Please advise.
yeah, actually, that's fantastic, and the application will allow for that. The thing is that there needs to be a lead
Hmm.
organization on your application. So whoever is going to be responsible for the funding, therefore responsible for how the funding gets used, responsible for reporting, etc. So if you have a collaborative application, that's fine, and you can describe that. We have a question on partnerships and collaboration, but
Hmm.
we also ask you about your funding and the projects and programs, right? That is an opportunity here. What's your organization's mission? If you have multiple organizations, you've only got 250 words. I'll let you all figure out how you want to approach that. Um, and then, again, there's a word limit here. So you're going to have to figure that out on your end, but
Well,
absolutely you can apply as a collective, as a number of organizations, but there's going to have to be one entity that is responsible. Everyone else will kind of act as a subcontractor, but whoever that lead entity is on the application will be responsible for the reporting, etc. Maybe on the check-in calls we bring the
yes.
groups together, but you're more than welcome to submit a joint application, but there still has to be a lead applicant.
I think a good tip would be like paying attention to your uploads. We have a lot of upload opportunities. Use the uploads to be able to put and show that partnership and that collaboration on that application. I think that would be a great way if you don't have the space in typing. Because you already have that document, the five-page limit on the on that one question. I believe that could be where you can put more information on how are y'all working together, what are some of what's the joint mission and kind of where you go from there.
Next question is, what year's operating budget do you want most recently completed fiscal year? We want your operating budget for 2025. You know,
Yeah.
we want it for this year, most recent year.
Is there a match requirement for this projected budget?
There is no match requirement, but we do allow for space to talk about any in-kind or matching that you might be using for your application, but it is not a requirement, no.
All right. Now I said based on I want to say question 18, do businesses, professionals, and companies have to be the target of any intervention or program, or are metrics related to community participation like knowledge gains, etc., also acceptable for quantitative metrics? I believe the quantitative is two questions that go. One goes particularly to how you take on your quantitative metrics and how you either get it and utilize it. So that'll be where you talk about your quantitative metrics. We still ask a particular question about how many businesses, uh, professionals, and companies that you impact. So I would say you still have to consider that because that is one of our main focuses in the supports grant is how are you impacting creative businesses, professionals, and organizations. So I guess creatives could be a part of that quantitative metrics, right? And that would be kind of ideal for that question. But I think it really
Right.
goes on how you take in that data too. So we give you the space to talk about that, but also particularly
Yeah,
you have to be it's a requirement to really think about how do you impact creative businesses in your creative economic ecosystem.
right. So we have an opportunity for you to generally address the quantitative outcomes, and then we want to know, like numerically, literally, how many people, how many creative businesses, professionals, and companies are you going to support through your project? Um, we want to know that number. So, I mean,
And there's a question underneath it that says,
yes,
should the answer be only numerical?
yes, this is a numeric answer. We, yes, please give us a number, 32, etc. Um, so technically, I'm gonna say like, yes, creative businesses, professionals, and companies are ideally the target of these programs. Those are who we want to be seen helped through these programs. So yeah, that's what we're asking for. Because again, when you go back up to the funding uses,
Mhm.
we're looking at technical assistance for creative industry businesses, companies, and professionals, incubation, program delivery, et cetera. The end users of those programs are businesses, professionals, and companies, and we want to know how many. So the second part of this question, asking about metrics related to community participation, knowledge gain, et cetera. Those are broader metrics. Those sound qualitative to me,
Mhm.
not quantitative. So you have an opportunity to address qualitative and quantitative in your application. So qualitative, the community enjoys this. I'm going to stop there because again, I'm not trying to give people ideas of what we want to see on the applications. That's up for you all to demonstrate. But those are, you have an opportunity to discuss both sets of metrics there.
Okay. And so the next one is a two-part question. It says question 10 asks for a detailed budget, including line items. So I was wondering what kind of narrative information you would like to see in question 9, which is, I think I questioned the second part of it is what level of detail are you looking for in the line item breakdown of proposed use of funds? And or how do you see that page as different different pretty much from the program budget?
I feel like that's really specific on asking what we want to see and how we want it laid out. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't think that there's additional information we can add for that question. We want a 4-page PDF that includes your operating budget, programming budget, and a detailed budget for the grant fund specifically. And we asked you right here to include line items, in-kind contributions, or financial support. My goodness. And then specific funding uses identified in your application. That's as much information as we're going to give you on that piece. Uh, And that's what we're looking for. And there's only 4 pages. So however much or how little detail you include in giving us those items, you've got 4 pages.
Um, the next one is, are we competing against other applicants within the Rubik scoring? Like, is this going to be a top 8 applicants get funding based on the rubric?
Yes, the highest scoring applications are the ones that get selected for funding. That's how this is done.
Is there any
Um,
document? Oh, I'm sorry.
is there any documentation we can reference of past winners, their programs and outcomes for this grant? No, there is not. This is the first time we are running this grant application. Um, so the only thing that I would say that you could reference is our year in review information that I think is on the Knowledge Center. Arlen, am I getting that right?
Yes. Say, I'm sorry, say that again.
Um, this is the first time we are running this particular program.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, we had support organizations looped in with our business development and expansion. And there was not a clear divide.
It
So
was not a
this
clear divide.
grant is specific around programming support, and it is the first time that we are running a program like this. Um, in our Knowledge Center, we have a review. Oh, yeah.
Yes, it should be on. I'm
It's
gonna go
like the
right now.
2024 recap, right?
Yeah,
We did
I'll
a
be on the second
review. We
page.
also have our previous newsletters available where we have like our year in review where it talks about our programming and other things. I would have to,
Look for it.
oops. And now in real time we get to see our tools working. Um, okay. We've not done a program like this before. You're not going to have previous folks that you're going to be able to look at for that. What we
Mm-hmm.
do have is, my goodness, let me go back to the division page. At the bottom of our main division page, we have reports from our 2024 communities.
Mm-hmm.
And this is more specific to what these communities did with a call for projects in 2023, 2024. And these are the outcomes of those projects. So,
If you go to our it's the creative industry season right now that I'm able to see, the 2025 creative industry season, where you'll be able to see 7 of our grant awardees who received the creative industry season award grant that was somewhat similar to the creative supports grant, where they did have technical assistant based events and programming that was funded through us. So you'll be able to see with the New Mexico Institute Mining and Technology Performing Art Series, All Hands on Deck, to the Bear Road Native Fashion Show, Taos County Creative Entrepreneur
yeah,
Exhibit and
we're,
Symposium.
yeah, you can look through the different stuff that's on our website, but this is the first time that we're running this program. So we don't have previous
Previous awardees
reports
of
that you
this
can look at.
particular.
The next question says, how do you measure the organizational track record? We are doing that by looking at your answers right here in organizational track record and alignment. So we're looking at your mission, we're looking at your program services and initiatives. We want to know how many years you've been in business and how many people you've supported over the years, and you have an opportunity to do an upload. So by answering the questions in this section, that is how we are going to be measuring your organizational track record and then awarding or awarding points based off the rubric. And then the next question is the rubric quantitative in any way or more qualitative based on a subject's interpretation? No,
I don't know. I think that's
this is
more of asking
very,
how we're going to score that
we're gonna
section,
score it
and I
like,
think that might just be a little like,
yeah, no, we're gonna score it like this.
yeah.
You have 5 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections, and each section has a total number of points that can be awarded. And then they'll be awarded based on your responses, based on the clarity, based on, you know, all of those all of those things. Did you demonstrate did you demonstrate these? We ask you directly in the questions what we're looking for, and then you'll be awarded a numeric value from the scoring committee based on that.
All right. And now for this program, how is underserved defined?
Um, my goodness, more and more questions. Let me get down
Mhm.
here. Underserved communities, where, you have the ways that we're measuring this right now. These are the different regions and populations. Minority slash underserved community is a broad definition. You're able to describe that in your responses here, where you can get more specific about maybe the communities that you checked the boxes on here. Underserved communities are communities that have not had the same level of access to resources, services, and opportunities. That can almost be anyone, anywhere, anytime, of any background, depending on the way that you're looking at it. So we're not, there's not a specific description for this because you're not, we're not being, we're not we're not gauging on that, and it's also not a heavy weighted part of the application. So underserved is, what your organization defines as underserved, and that is a requirement. That's just a requirement of our statute, is that 50% of funding goes to rural and underserved communities. So I would just note that we had a question on, is it whoever gets the highest score out of the 200 points? Yes, and it also has to be split between folks that are serving all parts of the state. So once we hit that 50% in the urban communities and the urban centers, because the majority of our applications end up coming from Albuquerque and Santa Fe, once we hit that 50% mark, the other 50% has to be to programming, to the next highest scoring applications that are serving rural and underserved communities. And that's just based on where you're located in the region that you might be applying for, and based on who you're serving. But typically we base it on where your organization is, where the address is for your organization and where it's registered.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to make
Given
sure.
the anxieties on the last little button submission, even though it says successfully submitted, could the team possibly send an email showing that it was received? Um, I am if you see that pop up at the end, we got your application. We're probably not going to send you a follow-up email because
That's
we
my
have
number.
several other grant programs and several other programs and things that we are running on our end and a lot of events that we're trying to plan right now. So we're not going to do independent follow-ups to each application. We don't know how many applications we will get.
Mhm.
Maybe when the application closes, we'll do a
We'll be
mass
able to.
email to everyone that's sent, but you're not going to get an email from us, soon after. If you submit tomorrow, like we're not going to confirm it for you. We're going to wait till the application period closes for everyone, and then maybe we'll reach out broadly to the entire group.
Yeah, I think I just be considerate that we are a division of two running these applications and programs as well. So you just got to be considerate of the time that we have. We will do our best to be able to communicate when needed, like if a problem arise. But as for being able to do a lot of individual communication, is going to be pretty hard in this next few months.
Yeah. The next question is, my 501(c)(3) partners with a state university. Can we submit the application together, or should we submit separately and simply reference the partnership? Please do a joint application if you're submitting as a partnership. If you submit two different applications for the same programming, we'll consider it a duplicate application.
Hmm.
And then we might only score one of them. And then if you all approach those applications differently, we're only going to score one of them if it's for the same program and it's from a different partner. So please do it on one application.
That's for theater management.
Can grant
Can a
funds be
grant fund
allocated?
be allocated to support training and operational expenses for theater management, specifically to equip staff and volunteers with the skills and resources necessary to successfully operate the theater and host fundraising events that sustain and advance Carlsbad Main Street's mission.
Um, that sounds like a program specific, like you're asking about the project or program that you're submitting for directly. So we're not going to answer that one. This funding is for organizations that have existing programming and experience in supporting creative industry companies and workers. So if it's a
And technical
brand new
assistance.
initiative where you're like a brand new initiative, we're not looking at new programming. We're looking at organizations that have existing programming resources and services that aid these specific areas. And that's pretty much all I'll be able to say on that one. So the next question is on basically, can you save and return to resume your progress? No, you cannot.
No.
We've had too many issues with that in the past. So if you have filled it out at one point and then closed it, that will not work. So the best thing you could do is get a Word document open, um, use the PDF
Mm-hmm.
version that we have linked right here so that you can pull all the questions up in front of you and then
Mm-hmm.
paste in all the answers when you're ready to go and just format them on another document. But you cannot save to resume and return to your progress with this form.
And now, this is from Gallup Arts. Am I understanding correctly that the period for this grant starts February 2026 and is for 1 year based on the required reporting, or do grant funds have to be expended by June 30th of 2026?
The grant period will be from 1 year when the funding and the contract and the grant agreement is in place. So we're projecting that the programming period will run from February 2026 to February of 2027.
Okay.
This next question is on a workforce development program in which they provide industry certification for economic-based industries. Could this be leveraged to expand the audience to, say, digital media or an industry supporting the listed NAICS code? It sounds again like it's specific to the project,
Yeah,
asking if it's a good project for this program. Again, I don't think we're going to be able to answer that. Please just
I would
do
just
your
apply.
best to demonstrate it and describe it in your application.
How did the EDD define creative ecosystem development, collaborative services, organizational partnership, cross-sector work? Thanks. I
There
think that's
is a creative industries study that was developed in 2024 that has a lot of background on what we consider the creative industries, types of collaborations, types of partnerships, etc. Um, Lots of information here, strategic plan, what we see. A lot of the programming that we do is based on findings and um, acknowledgments that were done throughout this study. So if you're wondering about how we consider the creative economy, please dig into the study because it's not something that we have. It's very broad and it's not something that we have like set definitions on. Ecosystem development and economic development looks a myriad of different ways depending on the communities and industries that you're serving. And collaborative services can look several different ways depending on how many partners that we're talking about or even talking about who you're serving. So again, that is up to the applicants to be able to demonstrate and define in their applications. And there's tons of resources throughout the study as well as on our website that you can use to understand the work that this division is doing.
that was a good push to the study.
Next question says, in terms of skill development and workshops for a for-profit creative business, can only use the grant to help develop skills for other creatives, not for non-creatives. I mean, I think that you could use this. I'm sorry. I'm going back to what this can be used for,
Mm-hmm.
and this is about building skills and knowledge and opportunity for creative professionals and business owners. So the majority of what's going on needs to be supporting, people
Creative
in
businesses.
these industry areas. This is not really about getting non-creative people into the creative industries. Um, there's other programming that does that. I think that it could be a part of the application, part of an application, but this is very specific um, to creative economy work. So in creative industries work. So those are the kinds of professionals that we're going to be want to be helping, because those are the people that can benefit the most, right? If we have a non-creative that goes and takes a workshop on glass blowing or jewelry making, or I've never danced before, but I'm going to go take a dance class. That's not the same as them turning around and pursuing a creative profession and making it into a hobby and then making it into a business and scaling and growing that business. Yes, there is probably cases in which someone says, I've been waiting my whole life to do this. I'm now going to become a creative professional.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not what we're trying to track, and what we're trying to accomplish with this programming. This is about increasing and enhancing the already available programs and support services for creative industry companies, businesses, workers, professionals, and getting more awareness out about those programs and supporting that programming. Not about pulling more people into the creative industries, even though it's a great side effect,
Yeah. I think the next one is something I thought over too. Does this grant apply to existing for-profit businesses that are in the software healthcare field? I think that would actually not be qualified personally, because it sounds like you do software and you already said the field that you're in is healthcare. Going back to the uses of the funds is to elevate the creative industry-based businesses, entrepreneurs and professionals in New Mexico. And healthcare is not in our field, while software development, computer design, things like that do fall under our purview. When you go to a specific niche like healthcare, agriculture, you actually fall outside of our purview, because then your focus and target audience is not the creative industry sector. It's not creatives, professionals, and not necessarily contributing or make to the creative economy in that case. So I would say that you already are outside of our uh, loop when it comes down to healthcare.
Yes, it needs to be specific. Creative industries means there's got to be some sort of creative component happening. Um, and we're working
Um,
on an FAQ right now, that will hopefully address some of that. I just haven't been able to get it approved in time. If
the
we are
next
to
one,
next question, again, I think that this is,
or
again, the next
yeah,
question is on a project, specifically asking if the project is a fit. And it's not a broad question about the application or requirements. So please just apply. Um, because we're not going to answer questions about people's specific projects and whether or not that they're a fit. That's something that's demonstrated.
I think we answered this other question in a way too. Can an organization that has a physical agent apply? I think in saying that, a physical agent is still a partnership or some form of collaboration. That would be something that you'll put into your application.
Yes, it should be fine.
Okay. The other question was the question was, thank you for addressing my question. Will these questions and their responses be a part of the recording to access outside this webinar? It will be part of the recording. Um,
They'll be in the recording. I don't know that we'll do a separate document for it.
yes.
But the questions will be part of the recording. Question 10, is the programming budget asking for the subset of existing budget that would support the creative industries during the prospective funding period? The programming budget is asking about the budget for any programming that you're describing your organization does. We want your broad organizational budget, your existing programming budget, money, funding that you already have allocated towards the programs that your organization offers. And then we want a budget with just what you're doing with the grant funds. I don't know how else
No, that's it. I think that was
to
clear.
address that.
The
If
other question
we
was, yeah,
apply and are approved, do we receive the full amount or does it adjust based on the number of applications similar to New Mexico arts? Um, Again, funding awards are for up to the 62.5, and the number of awards may change. The amount of funding may change based on availability. Um, yeah, you can request up to $62,500 for the programming, and that's that's that.
yeah, I would just request the amount that is in the application. If you were awarded, we will let you know if any changes happen. We will be in communication if the price change, if it goes lower than 62,000. But I would argue right now, just think about the 62,500 up to, and and complete your application from there.
Yeah. Another question, my business buys products from local artisans, which I would like to increase, but the non-allowable uses says individual artistic creations. How do I define the difference to be eligible for funding? We can't tell you how to do that. You'll just need to figure out how to define that because that's asking us how to answer the grant application. And then the other piece there is this is funding to provide programming services or resources that support creative industries, um, providing programming resources or services. So just based on that alone, it does not sound like it is a fit for this grant application.
Okay. I think the next question, I'm sorry, I read it. I'm just going to kind of summarize it.
Mhm.
Or just read the last question of it. Does the grant have to serve creative industry professionals alone, or can it serve non-professionals who will then engage with the creative industries or creative practices?
I think we answered this question already, right? This
I
is
think we
that
did.
we this this programming is focused on elevating programming that's supporting creative industry business companies and workers, not about getting non-creatives into the creative industries. That's not the purpose of this program,
Yeah.
of this funding.
So you should have some creative business touch. Um, is focusing on education, pathways into creative business, pre-professionals appropriate?
It sounds like a program specific
Yeah.
application.
Clarification that only 8 to 10 applicants will be chosen. It says subject to change in that as well. So 8 to 10 for right now. Could change at any point in time. If we do change it, we will let everybody know about those changes.
Yeah, and I'm not, you know, how much is a pool of funds to be distributed? That would be the max amount of awards that we stated multiplied by the max amount of funding awards.
Hmm.
And we also already addressed this about the application. You cannot save your answers in the application. So you will need to just paste it uh, into the application when you're ready to submit. So don't try to go back and forth with it or have it open for several days and think that your words are going to stay in there. You can only submit the application when you're ready to submit. You cannot save and return your answers.
Um,
Okay, that's not a question.
no.
Do EDI and nonprofit executive order concerns apply to the Okay, this is state funding, so we're not tied to what the NEA and NEH are doing. It's not relevant for us. Can an organization apply for more than one project? It needs to be wrapped into one
One
application. If we
application.
see two applications from your organization for separate projects, we're only get like your organization can submit one time and we're going to review that application, whichever one comes first. So if you're going to do multiple projects with the 62.5, great, but you will not be awarded more than 62.5, for example, for multiple projects. This is going to multiple organizations. So if you are looking to apply for more than one project, it needs to go through in one application.
One application. Study was helpful. Thank you for the document. Thanks, Shawnee and Arlen, very helpful. This last one is talking specifically, I think it talks more to their organization, and if they're eligible to be an applicant. As a 501c3, I would say apply, please. I think you would, we went over all the eligibility requirements of who's eligible to apply from for-profit, nonprofits, government entities, nation tribes and pueblos, as well as public serving institutes. I think we have universities and colleges in there as well. So, that would be a good reference to go back to just to see, and I would just say apply if you already have been doing the work.
Yeah, and again, we can answer broad questions about, we're only, after this webinar, we are only going to be answering if technical questions about the application. It's not submitting. Did it go through? If you got the screen that said your application was submitted, it did go through. You don't necessarily need to email us, but we will not be answering program specific or is my organization qualified? Does this program count? Anything that's like talking about the proposal or the program, we've addressed in depth over the last 2 hours and 6 minutes. Is that true?
It's 2 hours and
I
6
hope
minutes.
not.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
That's what it says. I don't think that that's accurate. So any questions that we receive from this point over, if they are not related to the technical specifications of the application, you will not receive a response from us, because this is the opportunity for Q&As during these webinars. And we will also have that published in writing on our grant FAQ as soon as I get that published from our leadership. We look forward to reading and reviewing the applications that you all submit. If you don't meet the eligibility guidelines when we're reviewing the pass fail section, we will not be reviewing those applications. So please just make sure that you review the eligibility and review the funding uses, and we will make sure that this recording is available as soon as it's ready to go. And with that, happy Friday. We're looking forward to seeing your applications, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all 118 people who showed up.